Part 5, Chapter 3, Chains, Chains. Our eager hopes, our leaping expectations were soon crushed. The wind of change was only blowing in drafty corridors, in the transit prisons. Here, behind the tall fences of the special camps, its breath did not reach us, and although there were only political prisoners in these camps, no mutinous leaflets hung on posts. They say that at Minleg the blacksmiths refused to forge bars for hut windows. All glory to those as yet nameless heroes. The special camps began with that uncomplaining, indeed eager submission to which prisoners had been trained by 3 generations of corrective labor camps. Prisoners brought in from the polar north had no cause to be grateful for the Kazakh sunshine. At Novorodnoy station, they jumped down from the red boxcars onto ground no less red. This was the famous Jezkazgan copper, and the lungs of those who mined it never held out more than 4 months. There and then, the warders joyfully demonstrated their new weapon on the first prisoners to step out of line. Handcuffs, which had not been used in the corrective labor camps. Gleaming nickel handcuffs, which went into mass production in the Soviet Union to mark the 13th anniversary of the October Revolution. These handcuffs were remarkable in that they could be clamped on very tight. Serrated metal plates were let into them, so that when a camp guard banged a man's handcuffed wrists against his knee, more of the teeth would slip into the lock, causing the prisoner greater pain. In this way, the handcuffs became an instrument of torture instead of a mere device to inhibit activity. They crushed the wrists, causing constant acute pain, and prisoners were kept like that for hours, always with their hands behind their backs, palms outward. The warders also perfected the practice of trapping forefingers in the handcuffs, which caused acute pain in the finger joints. In Burlag, the handcuffs were used religiously. For every trifle, even for failure to take off your cap to a warder, they put on the handcuffs, hands behind the back, and stood you by the guardhouse. The hands became swollen and numb, and grown men wept. "I won't do it again, sir. Please take the cuffs off." It was easy enough for someone to scribble the order, establish special camps, submit draft regulations by such and such a date. But somewhere, hard-working penologists, and psychologists, and connoisseurs of camp life had to think out the details. How could screws already galling to be made yet tighter? How could burdens already back-breaking be made yet heavier? How could the lives of Gulag's denizens, already far from easy, be made harder yet? Transferred from corrective labor camps to special camps, these animals must be aware at once of their strictness and harshness, but obviously someone must first devise a detailed program. Then again, they quite blatantly borrowed from the Nazis a practice which had proved valuable to them. The substitution of a number for the prisoner's name, his I, his human individuality, so that the difference between one man and another was a digit more or less in an otherwise identical row of figures. This measure, too, could be a great hardship, provided it was implemented consistently and fully. This they tried to do. Every new recruit, when he played the piano in the special section, i.e., had his fingerprints taken, as was the practice in ordinary prisons, but not in corrective labor camps, had to hang around his neck a board suspended from a rope. And in this guise he had his picture taken by the special section's photographer. All those photographs are still preserved somewhere. One of these days we shall see them. In work rolls, too, it was the rule to write numbers before names. Why before and not instead of names? They were afraid to give up names altogether. However you look at it, a name is a reliable handle. A man is pegged to his name forever, whereas a number is blown away at a puff. If only the numbers were branded or picked out on the man himself, that would be something. But they never got around to it. Though they might have easily done so, they came close enough. All this was in 1949, the year 1949, the 32nd year after the October Revolution. 4 years after the war, with its harsh imperatives, had ended, 3 years after the conclusion of the Nuremberg trials, where mankind at large had learned about the horrors of the Nazi camps and said with a sigh of relief, "It can never happen again. It can never happen again." If you remember all this, it may not surprise you to hear that making him wear numbers was not the most hurtful and effective way of damaging a prisoner's self-respect. But there were people for whom the numbers were indeed the most diabolical of the camp's devices. Among them were the devout women members of certain religious sects. These women refused to wear numbers, the mark of Satan. Nor would they be given signed receipts, to Satan, of course, in return for regulation dress. The camp authorities showed laudable firmness. They gave orders that the women should be stripped to their shifts and have their shoes taken from them, thus enlisting Winter's help in forcing these senseless fanatics to accept regulation dress and sew on their numbers. But even with the temperature below freezing, the women walked about the camp in their shifts and barefoot, refusing to surrender their souls to Satan. Faced with this spirit, the spirit of reaction, needless to say, enlightened people like ourselves would never protest so strongly about such a thing. The administration capitulated and gave their clothing back to the sectarians, who put it on without numbers. End of Part 5, Chapter 3.